going on, guys? Pat here, and in this episode of the build series, it's time to start turning our attention over to the body. We got most of the stuff done on the frame, so we'll probably cover some miscellaneous stuff in this video, like running the fuel lines. But finally, we can start turning our attention to wrapping up the body and then getting this thing bolted back together. So, in the last video, you guys saw that we had bolted the transmission in finally. Since then, I think I filmed that video last week, and this weekend we were making some progress on the car. I didn't really film, we were just kind of focusing on working. And what we did this weekend that you didn't see on video was through the drive shaft in the car. It's pretty tight as far as tolerance. Once the rear end actually compresses to where it'll be at ride height, we should have the proper amount sticking out of the tail shaft. Right now it's not as much as it should be, but it'll pull out as the rear end compresses, so that should put us where we need to be. We cut out the rot that was forming down here at the bottom of the cowl, and my dad actually cut the piece in and put it in. I was working on a few other things. It's a pretty common rot area that you don't see a lot because it's hidden behind the fender. The problem is the cowl, a lot of water and debris will get down here, and then it just falls and collects down on this, and it rots through. So the other side's fine. I'm surprised it's solid over there, but this one was rotted through, so we cut that out, replaced it. We cut the passenger wheel well and got that piece patched in there. As you can see over here, I have to finish weld that on the back side and also grind that out and then finish running the seam here. I have to finish weld everything back here, put this piece in, and we also finalized the cut for the transmission hump. So that's the final hole that we're gonna have and have to patch in. So I have to stop at a local shop here to get that piece rolled. It's a compound radius, so it's not really something we can do well here. As far as other stuff we did, we just quickly bolted in the pedals. I just threw a bolt in through the firewall just to start getting an idea of where we want the pedals to be location wise. Looks like this is about where they're going to be, so it's going to mount similar to where the factory master cylinder mounted, but we're going to have to do a little bit of work here. We're going to have to cut this out and give it a flat mounting surface, because the last bolt hole for the pedals ends up about here, so we're gonna have to cut all this out. And we're not using this anyway, so we're gonna cut it and shave it, but we're gonna cut over here and make this all flat so we can have the pedals mount on a flat surface. And then we also gutted the wiring harness out, so now all of the wiring is out of the car. Pulled the digital dashes out and everything, because we're going to be fully rewiring the car and rerouting everything with the paintless harness. So got a good amount done, but we also still have a good amount to do. As far as what I'm going to get going on now, I'm going to probably start finish welding some stuff, so I'll check in once I get some work done. Alright, so I'm tired and incredibly dirty, but we're making good progress and finally getting some stuff done. Got the roll cage pads all fully welded in. Produced a lot of slag, so I'm going to have to clean some of that up before we start priming it and painting it. Still need to weld in this piece here. I'm waiting for my dad to get home because it's just way easier to have one person hold it while the other person tacks it. Every time I try and weld it in, it just falls straight through the floor. But still have to grind some welds down. See, the roll cage is welded in there. Just kind of did it in some 5-inch stitch segments. That was the easiest way to do it versus trying to just run a single bead, especially when visibility isn't the best. So stitched that all in. That's all good. Wheel wells are done. We got the new trans tunnel piece. We had to make it way bigger than it needed to be. We went 4 inches bigger on each side than what was there. Similar compound radius front to back. So we'll just cut that to fit. We're gonna do that, I think, once we get the back of the car painted and completely done. We'll move on to that and the firewall. I ordered a plate from Speedway Motors. They actually make a plate that you cut the firewall and weld in for mounting Tilton and Willwood pedal assemblies. So we're gonna have to cut pretty much all this out and then put it in there. But we're using this factory stud hole as a reference point for locating the pedals, so that way we can still use the factory column if we want to. I have the bottom of the column ripped open because we need to replace the bearing that goes at the bottom there. So slowly chipping away at all this stuff. As far as what's next, I'll probably just clean up and paint the bottom section of the panel we put in, because we still have to put in the cross member that goes there. So we're not gonna be able to access that area once this is welded in. So I'm gonna get that all painted so we can put this in. I'm also gonna hopefully pick up some cage nuts to go in there later this afternoon, and then the sheet metal work at the back of the car really should be wrapped up aside from painting, which isn't really a big deal. So it's nice to finally see that wrapped up and keep going, and then start moving on to the trans tunnel. All right, so we've been kind of jumping around all over the body, taking care of all the miscellaneous stuff that needs to happen. Big thing you'll probably notice here is that the firewall is not quite factory anymore. This is the plate I talked about from Speedway Motors. I think it's a 1/4 inch thick. It's pretty thick. And it was nice because it was only $15 and it was pre-laser cut for the master cylinder mounting holes, which for $15, that's not worth the effort to try and replicate that myself. So we cut the firewall where the factory master cylinder sits, all the way over to where the bulkhead for the wiring harness was. We worked in a plate over here. This is where the factory throttle cable will come to, and also the grommet for the wiring. We're going to be tucking the wiring down over here so it's hidden behind the engine. So we're going to have to poke a new hole there for the throttle cable. This area here where the steering column comes through, we're going to have to cut, probably cut it all the way down here. Flaming River makes a bearing that you bolt into the firewall. That's the right size for a factory column. So it basically replaces this big plate here, because this plate would bolt up against the firewall and then the column would run through it. So we're going to replace that with a nice black powder coated one. So this will all be flush here. So we're going to have to cut and then butt it up against the plate from Speedway. Then we're going to go through, kind of plug some of the miscellaneous holes, like this where the factory gas pedal mounted. I believe that's the speedometer cable hole. So there's just a lot of miscellaneous holes that we're going to go in and weld and clean up the firewall a little bit. We're not doing a full shave on it. I never wanted to do that or intended on doing that, but while we're here and we're already working on the firewall, I might as well just fill in some of those holes. On the back side of the car, we have that cross brace tacked in. That was the one that I'd added the cage nuts into, so I have to go in and actually finish weld everything and then grind down some of the welds. I started throwing some rust seal on the areas that I've been welding and working on just to protect them. So I wiped everything down with acetone and cleaned it up. All the welding's done back here. You see I still have to put that back plate in, so I didn't fully paint the bottom side of that, but wanted to get everything protected. It's all going to get repainted or finally painted rather with something else. I'm not going to leave this as the top coat, so we're going to repaint the whole trunk. Probably undercoat the wheel wells, stuff like that. But this is just sort of a like protective base coat because I know it's super durable, so it's good to have that as a base layer. Today my main goal is to tackle the transmission hump. This is really the last big fab work that needs to be done on the car before we can get it back on the frame. So have my piece there that's way oversized. I'm gonna have to clean up this cut a little bit. This was just sort of a rough cut to start getting in the ballpark. So now that we actually have the piece and we're ready to start putting it in, gonna have to clean that up. So I left a pretty generous lip on the sides here, so I'm probably gonna trim that down a little bit and bring it a little closer to the floor. I'm probably gonna extend this cut back here. This is where the cross brace runs under the floor, so I'm gonna cut this lip back here, so we're welding this basically right onto the seam of where it meets the brace. Might extend that cut up a little bit, probably another inch forward, not because we have to for clearance, but because it's gonna be easier to fit in that tunnel with that radius on the front. I mean, it's long enough to go all the way from the cross member all the way straight up to the firewall, but we're not going to go that far. So once that's in, I can go finish cleaning up the whole bottom of the car and then paint the entire bottom side of the car. I never did that in all my time of owning this car. So that's one thing we need to take care of. Still have to do fuel lines on the frame, but that's, you know, really it. We're kind of in the home stretch here for all the work that we're doing. So I'm excited, but there is still a good amount of work to do. So take care of it, and I'll check in a little bit. All right, so I've been kind of jumping around, taking care of some smaller things, threw oil in the engine, and then in my own stupidity, I forgot to put the new dipstick in, so I had to take the plug out of the oil pan and lost about 1/4 of a quart on the floor of oil, which sucks. But again, my own fault for not doing that. So I have a new dipstick in here. I'm not really too happy with how it fits. I cheaped out and bought one of the steel ones instead of going with a braided one that's flexible. And to get it to clear the header, I had to give it a pretty aggressive bend. That was the best I could do with the tube bender that I have. I don't want to just bend it by hand and kink it. So this will be okay for now, but you know, just to get it started and running. But within the next few weeks, we're going to change that out to a braided one, so it's not having all those sharp turns, and it'll fit a little better and it won't be right next to the header and all those things. We still have to do the trans hump in there, but hopefully we'll take care of that tomorrow. It's currently Friday. Just taking care of some smaller things just so we can check them off the list, and then really just leave that last little bit of sheet metal work for this weekend, and then hopefully next weekend I can get this all painted and then back on the frame. Right now I'm throwing the fluid in the trans. Have to put that in. Power steering fluid up here in the CVF Racing reservoir, and then Have to throw coolant in it still, which I'm not going to do till the frame's back on the chassis because I still don't have the heater core lines hooked up. But making good progress. I think we're still about 3 weeks away or so from that first autocross that we were shooting for. So it's going to be tight. Still not sure if we're going to, make it, but we're still pushing ahead, and we're going to try. So I'm going to take care of some of this stuff, and then I'll pick things back up once we're doing some more sheet metal work. So we're picking this section of the video up a few days after the last part of the video. Just kind of wanted to put our heads down and make some good progress. I wasn't really too focused on filming. Last you guys saw, we had started welding in the plate that we're using to mount the brake pedals. Happy to say now, finally, all the metal work is done on the car. Didn't really film too much of the process, but I mean, there's plenty of videos out there on how to do basic metal work, so I didn't really want to go too in depth. So we have all of our plates in here. I think in the last part of the video, these two had their initial welds in, and then this was still the factory metal here. But we ended up cutting to the edge of the plate, coming all the way through, and butting them up. So now this is all one flat surface. This is 1/4 inch plate, 1/8 inch, 1/8 inch. So it's a lot sturdier than what was from the factory. I mean, ultimately in some areas you're still relying on the sheet metal, but this hardly flexes. We're still gonna add bracing just because it may still flex when you're actually using the brakes and applying all that force through the firewall, but it's a lot better than what was there, so I feel a lot better about this. Went through, shaved all the holes that I was talking about, so the factory speedo hole, I made a little plug and put that in there. Welded in the holes that we're not going to be using at the factory gas pedal, and just kind of miscellaneous factory holes in the firewall, and ground those down. I tried to get it somewhat level, but I'm not too worried with getting it perfect because we're going to skim coat the entire firewall with Bondo. And sand it down. Maybe not the whole firewall, but at least the areas that we've been doing all the work and where there's all the grinder marks and stuff like that. We haven't really decided on a color yet for the firewall. We're either going to be paint matching it to the car, not that you can really see the color because it's covered in dust, but twilight blue, or we're just going to do it in a satin black. I'm not really sure yet. I think it could be cool to paint match it, but we'll see. Just haven't really decided yet. I mean, I guess in favor of doing the blue, we already have all the materials, because those of you who have been following the build for a while know we painted the car ourselves, and we literally still have, I think, half a gallon of the blue base coat left over from when we painted it. So we have the paint ready to go, and primer and everything. So we'll see. Obviously, I wire wheeled all the firewall down as much as I could to get it prepped. I was just using a big wire wheel on an angle grinder. I still have to get in here and scrape off all the factory sealant, and then get in there with a smaller wire wheel. Which I'll do soon. Over here on the frame, we got the fuel lines run. We still have to finish mounting them up at the front, so we just got to cut those to size and cut it as well in the back. This is the 3/8 line, the stainless from Jegs. We have the DEI heat shield back here to help isolate it off the frame and also from each other, and then just isolated clamps running all the way down. And then we still have to add the mounts up there, so I'll have to order some because we ran out. And then we're just going to be doing a braided stainless line from probably about here. So we'll probably cut like 3 inches off there and then run it up to the fuel injection system. The transmission hump is finally in. So there's no longer a big hole in the floor of the car. We ended up taking a little bit off the plate and then overlapped it with some of the factory floor, so it's probably about maybe 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch overlap. So we can probably see it from here, through tacks on the inside of the car, and then fully seamed it from the bottom. That was just the easiest way to do it. We could have butted it up, but as far as fit and finish, this is how we got the fit and finish that we wanted, the easiest. So ground all the welds down there. So yeah, it's fully sealed and ready to paint. I added a little shifter hole in there. It's only a 3 inch, which in theory should be big enough to allow this to come up through the floor and then have sufficient room for the shifter going through its throw. I can always trim it a little bit if it's not enough, but I just wanted to have the smallest hole possible so I don't let too much hot air and whatnot up through the trans tunnel. So I finally have the piece back here installed. So that's all set. So all the metal work back here is done, and well, really the metal work everywhere is done. This is a big moment in all the updates that we're doing on the car, because honestly this took the longest. The frame start to finish took less time than all the metal work on the body did. So we knew this was going to be the most involved part of the updates that we were doing, but glad it's over. Not a huge fan of doing metalwork. I'm not that great at it, but also it's just tiring and you get incredibly dirty and it's just not that glamorous or fun. But finally, all set with that. Now we can move on to doing the paintwork, which I'll probably get into in the next video. So thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe, and see you guys in the next episode.